Third World War is around the corner. United States of America, Spain, Greece, United Kingdom, and some other Western nations have officially closed down their embassies temporarily in Kyiv, in Ukraine capital. They are anticipating a potential Russia retaliation at the heart of Kyiv. This is coming at the time when Sweden has actually issued a alert note of a third world war for its citizens and have started asking her citizens to prepare for an outbreak of a major war. This comes after Ukraine used US long-range missiles to attack some key positions in Russia. Russia had previously warned that any use of US or Germany or Western-made missiles to attack Russia will be considered as a major escalation and as a declaration of war by these nations. Because according to Putin, this long-range missile cannot be launched by Ukraine. Ukraine don't have the technical expertise, and for this to be launched, it will need personnel from NATO countries and also personnel from NATO allied member states, and also will need airspace from NATO to carry out this operation. I'll play this video. Russia has promised to retaliate, and now they have closed down the embassy temporarily in anticipation of a major strike. Putin yesterday, that happens to be 19, warned that Russia was going to strike, and we're experiencing this. I want you to watch this video.
The US embassy is closed for the day after receiving information about a potential air attack. The embassy has told employees to shelter in place and US citizens elsewhere in the capital to be ready if an air alert is announced. Meanwhile, US officials say the Biden administration is sending anti-personnel mines to Kyiv to deploy for defensive purposes, only in eastern Ukraine, though. That decision comes days after the White House approved the use of longer-range weapons by Ukraine to strike inside Russian territory. Moscow says Kyiv fired US-supplied ATACMS at a weapons arsenal in the Bryansk region on Tuesday. In apparent response, Vladimir Putin updated Russia's nuclear doctrine, saying Moscow now has the right to use nuclear weapons in response to attacks using conventional weapons. That brought a defiant response from the Ukrainian president.
1,000 days, I think it's enough to understand that Putin doesn't want any peace. Even this day, they killed our civilians. Even, especially this day, they presented nuclear weapons strategy. Why? They didn't present peace strategy. Did you hear it? Did you read about it? No, of course. Of course, nuclear weapons strategy. Putin wants war.
Well, Volodymyr Zelensky claims the North Korean troop deployment to Russia could grow beyond 100,000 already. South Korean officials say Pyongyang has sent close to 11,000 troops to Russia, with some actually on the battlefield as well. We're covering this story from all angles. Mike Valerio is in Seoul, South Korea, but we're going to begin with Nick Payton-Walsh in Kyiv. What more do we know about the nature of this potential attack on US embassy?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're not hearing specifically that the embassy is indeed a target. It is simply that the American embassy is taking the exceptional measures, not one we've seen since the start of the war, the invasion in February 2022, as far as we can recall, of closing their facility entirely for, I mean, the day it seems, possibly longer. Now, that is, they say, as a result of concerns about an air assault. Look, tell ordinary residents of the capital here about that. They had 2.5-hour air raid siren this morning, another 45-minute one early in the early hours of the morning too. So very used to incoming attacks. It's a nightly thing here, but it is highly abnormal for essentially American diplomats to be told to shelter away and stay away from their place of work. The significance, well, of course, we are looking to see what escalation Russia might try and bring to this 1,000-day-long war after US missiles have been fired into Russia itself. That was in the last 24 hours. Since then, Ukraine has said it's hit more targets inside of Russia. The severe battalion, Russian military battalions, facilities inside Ukrainian Defense Intelligence said they hit overnight. So that onslaught is continuing. continuing. And I think the question is exactly what the nature of a Russian response would be. The sort of saber rattling the Russian President Vladimir Putin has been accused of, it's hard to quite define exactly how strident the change in their nuclear doctrine really is. But ultimately, it is the Kremlin head using the word nuclear again and trying to remind the West that this is a nuclear power that is struggling conventionally on the battlefield here and has done for a while, seeing an ascendance on the Eastern Front on multiple locations, but I think also struggling now to find a way to meaningfully respond to this extraordinary permission by the Biden administration to use these ATACMS longer-range missiles inside of Russia. It's aimed at obviously trying to give Ukraine a bit of an upper hand on the battlefield, a battlefield where they have been losing over the past months in multiple different directions, and possibly complicate the life of President-elect Donald Trump when he comes to power in January. But behind me here it's quiet, but I think it's fair to say that the fact that the Americans are warning quite so specifically about the hours ahead and an air assault has left many people, I think, anxious. Their information has been pretty good, frankly, for much of this entire war, and so I think there are worries here that it may be Western targets potentially at the end of any renewed or intensified air assault here against the capital. Max?
How would that be interpreted, Nick, from the American point of view? Would an American embassy abroad be seen as an attack on America?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we don't want to get into the whole idea of how this might escalate into direct conflict between those two nuclear powers. But I think if we saw the US embassy here specifically hit by Russian munitions, that would, of course, massively escalate matters. And that may not be precisely what the US embassy here is directly concerned about, but there are multiple different targets across this city where Westerners, where those from the European and NATO allies backing Ukraine reside or known to frequent. So I think it's a broad capital city on edge here. But I should stress, I don't think at this point, regardless of the escalation we've seen over the last 48 hours, that Moscow necessarily wants to take any strident steps that force it into a direct conflict with the United States. Yes, much of the sales pitch to Putin's domestic audience is that they are already at war with NATO as a whole. That's their way of explaining how badly, frankly, the war has gone for them over 1,000 days. It was only supposed to last a matter of weeks, so many advocates of the Kremlin said when they began the invasion.